Welcome, Christian. It's absolutely amazing to have you here and open the Audacious Conversations of 2026. You and I were just having a very short conversation beforehand, and I put you on the spot and I'd say, Christian, I'd love for you to introduce yourself with something audacious. Over to you.
Absolutely. Yes, and I'm so excited for this conversation. So, yes, my name's Christian, and something audacious. My first book, The Law in 60 Seconds, and the book is, of course, relevant because it's in the context of the books that you and I met. But that was a book educating the public on their legal rights across a whole spectrum of areas. And at the time I was writing it, I wasn't actually yet myself a qualified barrister or fully qualified barrister. So to write a book educating the public on their rights when you yourself are not yet fully qualified was certainly something that felt very audacious at the time. And now I look back, it's one of my biggest achievements, but was very audacious. And that's shown me that actually in our moments of audacity, being audacious are some of the moments that change our lives. So yes, I'm Christian, and that's my audacious stories and introduction.
Fabulous. I love that. I love that. That's your sort of law in 60 seconds. And actually, when you and I met in 2024, you were just about to publish your second book.
That's right. That was Your Right to Protest, Understand It, Use It. Yes.
Yes, indeed. And, I mean, you and I were writing, I think our books came out literally a week apart. We had Profile, which is the same publisher that published our respective books. And again, I fondly remember how you and I met. And I thought, well, let's do that early because, for the audience who doesn't know you or your audience who doesn't know me, why don't you tell that story?
Of course. So Profile Books, as you say, they're a publisher and they have a summer fair every year. And I'm sure the process was the same for you as well. Before you put a book out with Profile, they invite you into their offices and they show you their selection of all of the great authors that they have. And instantly there was a book that stood out to me and it was yours. And at this point and we can both attest to this, we'd never met each other, but I was like, that book is the one I want. And so I live in Manchester and I was in London, and your book also was one of the bigger ones there. So I had the task of carrying this book along with my others back to Manchester. But I was like, no, that is one I want to leave this Profile HQ with. And then as it happened, I want to say it was about a week later. I don't think it was much more than that. But then I saw you and we got speaking. And then I realized that you were the author of this book that I had. So I do feel like the world has a way of making these things happen, but it was a lovely way to meet you because I think there was already a genuine admiration there. And it wasn't just me saying that, but I was able to prove it because I'd taken your book home with me.
Well, that's so lovely, Christian. Thank you so much. I still remember because, most of these moments in our life, it's a felt it's a felt sensation, and because the book was not yet published, that's the paradox about it. So it wasn't a published book, and for some reason I was really intrigued as to why you picked that one. And I remember asking you at the time, I said, Alina, but it was something about it. I think it's also the fact that the colors, all of those it was colorful enough, it was quite chunky. And it was a wonderful moment that, out of all of those reputable authors, there's plenty of choice. For some reason, you just decided to pick mine. And then we met at that party in London before you were going back to Manchester.
Absolutely. And I think we were talking a little bit about this next part off air, but it's that thing about, I've realized in my job as a lawyer, there are so many points at which I need to confine myself and be constricted. And notwithstanding that, I've always appreciated the importance of audacity and being audacious. And I think in that sense, the book probably in some way spoke to a side of myself that maybe I have to keep more under wraps than I might like. So in taking that from Profile, it was like, yeah, okay, this is me making a bit of a commitment myself to leaning into this side of myself that I know is so important.
But I'll tell you another story, which is completely off track. But there was someone else who picked or saw the book. I've never met her. We ended up just connecting afterwards. She's also from Manchester. Don't ask me. There's some sort of magnetism. And then she saw the book in Westminster, was already published, and she loved it. And yet she thought it's too big. It's not going to go into my bag. Because the book, I've got it here.
Yeah, it's a good
the book is quite big in terms of, and So she said, I didn't pick it up, Alina. I actually went home and I bought it on Amazon because I didn't have the bag to put it in. And it was like, ha. Your book is really tiny, winny, beautifully. You could put it into a pocket.
That's right.
That's why it's called, Your Right to Protest, or, the law in 60 seconds. And I thought, this is a great tip for anybody who wants to write, another book. It's as beautiful as mine is. It's big and chunky. There is a reason to make them smaller so they go into a bag.
But you know what? It's so interesting because I think in some ways, I think audacity is something that is not encouraged in society at all, in my view. And that's why I really rate and value the work you do. But I think almost how you might have like I don't say Bible in a disrespectful way, but an authoritative book on your table that is a book you might sit down and actually just download the information because it's so important for your life. In some ways, the size of your book speaks to its importance and the fact that maybe you do need to give it that respect because it's such important information contained within. So I very much get it from both sides. Yeah, I can see the benefit to a bigger book too.
Thank you. I received that. And we're talking about the spectrum. So my book is called The Audacity Spectrum. You could have both sides of the spectrum and they're both, good. There's not good, bad is what is. But my mission is to redefine audacity under these three pillars of courage, care, and nonconformity. So I'd love to see which one of those pillars sort of speaks to you right now, and maybe we'll go there.
Yeah, sure.
Well, let's start with that.
Yeah. So I think the way in which TL's The Law in 60 Seconds, A Pocket Guide to Your Rights came about definitely for me represented courage because just to give a bit of context to your listeners, the first step to becoming a barrister is getting your pupillage, and that's an awfully competitive process. I think the stats might even suggest that most people that go through bar school, if you like, so the academic training, won't actually get a pupillage at the end. And your pupillage is effectively your training year. So the idea or the unwritten rule is that when you're a pupil barrister, your sole focus should be being a pupil barrister, training to be a barrister, because it's almost such an honor to even be in that position. So I think it did take courage for me to decide to write a book alongside that. And that's because it was something, the information contained therein was something so important for me. So I think that was a courage part. And I think the care part really stands out for me too. I think because I think I've learned in my line of work, particularly as I've started to take on more complex cases, that sometimes care is it's something that's not actually seen. Sometimes you might care for someone so much, but the way in which they see you, you might not be able to show care right then. But even you being there is the care. So to give an example, often I represent, I work with a lot of families in inquests where a close one to them has died, and I'm investigating the circumstances as to how that happened. And often when I'm in the courtroom, I'm their lawyer, and I have to be their lawyer because there's an extent to which I need to keep a bit of an objectivity about the work I'm doing to make sure they get their best results. So although I would like to say I always try and show a lot of care to my clients, it's different because I'm there as their lawyer right there. But actually, in some ways, the real care isn't from the performance of what I show them, but it's the days and weeks beforehand that I've been reading every part of their papers, sacrificing time with my own family and friends to ensure that's done. And that care is the part they maybe don't see, but hopefully in the outcome is shown. But it's shown me that sometimes the truest care the other person might not see, but it's still equally or very important. So yeah, the care part's always really intrigued me.
Yeah, and it's interesting as I'm listening to you, Christian, because the care sometimes you might not be able to see, as you said, but most of the, at least in my opinion, the care is felt. People will feel the care because they will know your weeks of preparations, for those sort of 20 seconds of courage, as I call it in the courtroom.
That's very interesting. Yeah. And I would agree with that. And I would say confidently that I think all of my clients would say that they felt I cared for them. And that's just taught me something right here, actually, because it's the idea that sometimes we don't need to perform or even act anything. If it's in your heart, they will feel it anyway. So actually, I've got the scope to just be the lawyer in court for them because they know I care anyway. I like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I stand by that because it is the care. It's the feeling. You will know. I know when someone is caring or loving. You feel it. And sometimes even the harsh love, as I call it. If they do it with care, if the intention was a loving, caring intention, we will feel that. And I'm just seeing there was a comment from Angelina. I think she's saying, will a recording of this conversation be available at a later date? Yes, Angelina. This will go live and you'll be able to see it on LinkedIn, but also probably about a week later, I believe, we'll also put it on YouTube. So just saw that. So I thought I will interject. But I'm also curious, actually, Christian, because I know, we talked about the courage and the non-conformity. What is your mission? You and I, very briefly, I think that's a very bold and audacious mission.
Of course, yes, thank you. My mission is to educate the public, the society at large, on their legal rights. The reason that comes about is because, and I really do think this is a scandal, but we aren't taught in this country our legal rights when we're going through school, or not in any meaningful, proper way. And the reality is that means so many of us will engage with the institutions, will engage with those in authority, and we just won't know how to navigate those situations. And then what that means is that those organizations, entities, people in authority can actually treat us however they want to. And we can't do anything about it. And the way in which that erodes away at our confidence and so many other things is huge. And it just shouldn't be the case, because the reality is, if you break the law and you don't know that you've broken the law, but you've broken the law, you can still face punishment. So I think at a very basic for a society, it should be the case that we're educated on our rights. And absent government doing that, I really hope that through the law in 60 seconds, I'm able to do that. And I want it to be as accessible as possible. I don't want there to be a limitation in terms of finance or anything. I want people to just know their legal rights. And I truly believe that society will be better for it. How we feel about ourselves will be better for it. So that's the thing I'm really trying to push now. Wow,
that is audacious. And yeah, can't wait to see how that's going to pan out for you. Because obviously, you wrote the first book, which is The Law in 60 Seconds. Mm-hmm. And that's already educating the public. How can they do that? Also, your right to protest, it's another one. Do you have any ambition for a third book to come out?
This is the first time I've ever been asked that question. Mm-hmm. And the answer is now yes. So normally, and you'll know what it's like, after you've written a book, you actually do not want to write another book because the process is so intense. But I think I've now forgotten that sufficiently that I actually am willing to write the third. So yeah, the thought has now come, and I think it would certainly touch on some of the areas that we've been speaking about. And I think what's interesting as well, and perhaps this is the true audacity that I'm starting to realize, and I always say I feel like my audacious edge engages a bit when I speak to you. But in some ways, so I've mentioned my mission to educate the public on their legal rights, and in some ways, the writing of the book alone could be seen as an audacious step to doing that. But now that I've done that, it's almost as once you reach a certain point, you realize that you can even be more audacious because the book is in some ways my norm now. I'm fortunate, as you know, to have access to publishers that can publish books for me. So that's not actually audacious for me anymore. So I think my edge has increased in terms of what audacity looks like now. And I'm now revisiting, okay, alongside a book, is there anything else I can do to really ensure the public are aware of their rights? And that's something I still need to do. But I think if I look at everything through the lens of being audacious, the answer will come quicker than if I try and just sit with my own thoughts and figure it out.
Yes, and I'm really curious, actually. I think it's because now you said, wow, if a book is not, writing the book or publishing the book is not audacious anymore for you, Christian, what would audacious be? What's the thing that would feel a little bit, out of the comfort zone? Because that's, it feels stretchy. It feels a little bit in discomfort. And therefore there is some resistance, which you will have to push through. What is that?
Well, I think you touched on something so brilliant there. And that's the part about it has to feel outside of the comfort zone. So in the way I said that I'm so proud of The Law in 60 Seconds, because it was outside of my comfort zone at the time of writing, and now it's my norm. It's a question of, yes, what now is that thing that's out of my comfort zone? And I don't know if that's perhaps more video content, maybe even more with my face, where I'm really talking to people about their legal rights. I don't know if that's more taking to the streets physically and speaking to people. But it has to feel, for me to know that it's audacious, and maybe I'll ask you to hold me to account on this so I don't do anything that's too safe, but I think I have to feel like, oh, this is a challenge. And I've seen so much benefit come out of, or I've heard of so much benefit come out of people reading The Law in 60 Seconds. And like I say, the overwhelming feeling I had when writing that was audacious. So I know that I have to act with audacity for this next step. And that might be something to do with it. Yeah, video content, perhaps. Taking the streets myself.
But what, yeah, I'm sort of curious. I mean, I know you are obviously on Audacious Conversations, so we are going to explore that a little bit. But what makes you a little bit comfortable in your seat when you think about? Is it you know, being in front of the camera? I've seen you, you know, because you're taking interviews, you know, spoken on BBC and all sorts of different platforms. So I don't think that's audacious enough, I would dare say. So what could it be, you know, where you just feel like,
Yeah.
in your seat?
You're forcing me to raise the bar even higher. So I think it's when, so yes, you're right. I've done for cases, I've represented clients and I've appeared on TV a lot of times. And you're right, BBC or all of those sorts of platforms. I think there's something different when it's your own mission as opposed to supporting someone else's mission. I think also a self-identity thing. So I think when it was the publication of the book, The Law in 60 Seconds, and I mentioned before, I wasn't even at that point a fully qualified barrister. I think for that reason that felt audacious, because my own identity was, I'm not yet fully qualified and I'm writing this. How can I put this out? So perhaps it exists in that space, but I'm not entirely sure. And you're right. I have done the digital side of things before. Maybe there is something more. And maybe I don't know what it is yet, because actually, you know, what's interesting, I don't know if I ever planned to write a book and then the idea came and it sounded, but it was almost so far out of my brain space that it didn't, someone else had to prompt the idea. I think my now agent actually, before I wrote it. So maybe I can't even think of it properly yet because it's so audacious and I need someone to plant the idea perhaps. Then I'll think, oh my gosh, I'm scared to do that. That means maybe I should.
Maybe you should. You know, I told you, I'm challenging you out live. You should come on our Audacious Leaders Retreat in April. Then I'll stretch you to, you know, in well into your stretch zone, as we call it. But it is interesting in as much as it has to feel something that you are very passionate about. And I heard you saying, and stopped me a little bit in my tracks, because you are incredibly extraordinary, I dare say, advocating for other people. You know, seeing you in terms of you've been called, I think I wrote it down, it's been in the bio, you know, one of the top 100 changemakers of 2025. You obviously represented the family in the Ishaks, and also you created a law, and yet I think it's so you can advocate a lot for others. As you know, I wrote a whole chapter on advocacy. It's about your self-advocacy. I think that might not be as comfortable for you, maybe.
I think there's truth to that. I think there's definitely truth to that. I've often heard before that people fight so much harder for others than they will for themselves. And it's so easy to hear these things and think, that doesn't apply to me. And then when you have conversations like this, you realize that maybe it does. So I think there's definitely some truth to that. And I think it would be a real shame I think maybe the hard reality I need to accept is that I do a disservice to others by not properly advocating for myself and pushing the things that I think are important. Because fundamentally, of course, I'll get so much fulfillment if this mission of educating the public takes place, because that's massively important to me. That's massively important to the younger cousins that I have, you know, but equally, so many other people outside of me and my family benefit. So actually everybody fails or everybody worsens if I don't advocate for myself and push the things that are important for me. So I need to really look into that, don't I?
Or just reframe it slightly, because it's a natural human thing, is we don't really want to just, you know, it's not about the ego, I'm doing it for myself, it's your mission. Absolutely. So, you know, in the advocacy I'm just referencing my own book, but my definition of advocacy is when you care. So this is the care part that you started with. When you care so much about your mission, you know, about someone, about something, generally speaking, that you don't care about what people think. And this is a very counterintuitive truth, because people do think about what other people think. So it's really hard to stay true to that mission and then, you know, advocate for self or for the mission. So it'd be, I mean, already your mission is said to educate. How many again?
Well, actually, originally I said 1 million. That had been the number. But then I hopped on this call and I thought, well, actually, is that me being really audacious? Because it's not unusual for a video to get 1 million views on YouTube now. That is a thing. Any decent rap song, pop song will get 1 million views. So actually, and also that is a limiting belief, because my goal isn't to educate a million people. My goal is to educate the whole population. So I may as well just say that now and figure out the audacious vehicle I'm going to use to try and bring that about, right? So yeah,
There
that's why
you
it's
go.
1 million.
Fabulous. And the more you say that, the more it's going to become the norm. Interestingly, this is what happens.
Yeah.
Is yeah, and I remember, again, for me, I was bold enough early on, and maybe I need to re-say it, but I want to redefine audacity in the way Brené Brown redefined vulnerability. That's a big thing to say, but then again, we can, we're allowed to say whatever we're allowed to say in, and be bold, be ambitious, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's our truth.
Yeah. And I think also this is, and I'm having reflections, realizations as we're literally live on this call. But I think maybe audacity is something as well that through conversation and discussion and someone probing a bit, you kind of challenging your own thinking, I think that actually can help a person become more audacious as well, because I'm feeling my audacity level rise just by the conversation itself. So yeah, that's a learning for me too.
Yes, and actually, it is about having that big mission, and it doesn't really mean, as I said, just the fact that you've got the audacity or the courage to speak it out loud. It's already, as I said, sort of halfway there. Once
Yeah.
we set an intention, this is a big concept that I use in my life and in my work. It's about intentionality, and being deliberate. And you and I were talking very briefly for the audience, we're playing, is like my word for 2026. So every year I choose a word to define my year. It's playfulness.
Yeah.
And I had joy, I had easefulness, and it's that's my test this year. I'm going to play in the spirit of playing. And what's yours, Christian?
Yeah, so there's a few. I just love to ask, actually, was there a reason you chose the word playfulness for this year?
That's a really uncomfortable question to answer back, but I will, in the spirit of audacity. It's actually someone I've been challenged quite a bit by friends and family that I'm not playful enough. I'm just too serious. I think, and it's true. I'm sort of more conservative and serious, so I can do that very well. I love play and playfulness, and there is a more story. I gave a sort of mini TED to friends in September, where I talked a little bit about my own sort of life story. And I think I mentioned it once, not on my own, but on someone else's podcast. But I went to a boarding nursery at the age of before 2. So actually, I didn't get the chance to be really playful as a kid. So I've got this real longing to bring that back. And so that's the reason I was sort of challenged. I thought, what else? I've sort of asked for many other things. Why not? So I played a lot more, actually, even this sort of games, even as we had a game night last night. And I thought, the universe is already answering my wish, because once you set an intention, it's actually very, hard not to follow that path. It's just, you will see. So I'm curious, what's your word for 2026, Christian?
I love that. So my words, I think there's 2. I think ironically, audacious is 1. And based on what I've mentioned to you about what I want to do with the law in 60 seconds, you probably can see why. I think another one's visibility. And that again sounds maybe somewhat paradoxical given the visibility some of my work has had. But I think there's a different type of visibility that's going to be really important if I want people to educate people on their rights. In fact, to say it really basically, if I want people to know their legal rights, that information has to be visible. Currently, it isn't. So somewhere visibility has to come into play, right, to ensure this information actually gets to people where they are, whether that's on their devices, whether that's in their library bookshelves. I have to figure that out, right? So visibility is a big one too.
And not any visibility, actually, Christian. What you've just said, it's audacious visibility for you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's that's how we're going to frame your 2026 in many ways. And I will want to dare you to do one of these conversations every week out there. Put yourself out there. Let's make a big call to action. Who else is out there? And then you just get on people's podcasts and people's lives and talk about your big audacious mission.
I like that. I like that audacious visibility. Yeah,
Because you
absolutely.
already have visibility, in my view anyway. And I just wanted to, Vicky Harris just said, oh, and it's lovely to have you here, actually, Vicky, with us. But she said that she would recommend reading Lady Hale's latest book on the public, about understanding the court system. It feels like it really links with your ambitions. So that's for you, Christian. On Audacious Next Steps. Maybe it's a book with a more personal story and not just a pure educational one.
That's really
Yes.
Vicky. Thank you very much. The thing is, I'm on this call as a guest, but I've also got my notepad here, so I'm going to be making a note of all of these things. So, Vicky, that's very kind. Thank you.
That's great idea, because that's probably, that's the other thing you might not know. And I know we're sort of getting close to the end, but when I wrote my book wasn't meant to be the book that came out, which is a sort of leadership, was a much, much more personal book. And even for someone like me, Audacious, I just didn't think I was ready, or the public was ready, or I didn't think people were ready to have that book, because it's so much more personal. And I do think that is where you get more vulnerable, but I think this is where, you go deeper, talk about the feelings. So for you to connect and go the next level, Christian will put some of your own story there.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
So actually it is. So for you, Audacious Visibility, here we go. And then I'm sure you and I should have a conversation at the end of the year and see how that panned out for you, because I'm sure once we've stated it, it will, so the universe sort of conspires. Once we tell the universe what we want, guess what happens? Be careful what you wish for. That's interesting. Be careful what you wish for. As I was saying, I ended up with a really bad, that super flu over the holiday. But when people were asking me about months before, I said, I just want a Christmas in pajama this year. I traveled so much this year that I really wanted. Universe gave me exactly that, not in the form and shape that I wanted.
Yes,
So,
yeah. Can I ask a question then? So when it comes to choosing this word for the year, is there a planned outcome you anticipate at the end of it, or is it partly an experiment to see what happens, or like what's the hope at the end of the year based on the word that's chosen?
it's a good question, but it is always an experimentation. That's how for me, this is my philosophy of life. So it's I think once you set the intention, as I said to you, keep testing. So again, for the audience, I had in 2024, I think I mentioned to you, my word of the year was joy. And it was truly 2024 was the most joyful years when the book came out, yours and mine. And it was also the most painful year. So you have to be prepared for both sides of the coin, the yin and the yang, and the light and the dark. So it was a joyful year, which I celebrated. And the same last year was ease, and it was also very hard, but I celebrated them both. So I was sort of thinking, if it's audacious visibility, you may have to be okay. I'm sure it will turn up to be a very visible year for you. And maybe at times it will feel more that you are invisible for some reason.
I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you at the end of this year and reflecting on this, because it will be really interesting if that has rang true. And my side of the bargain, my personal commitment will be audacious visibility. And I would love to just play this out and see what happens.
Let's play. I'm playing this year. I would love to, and I will dare say this 2026 for you, Christian, will turn up to be a very visible, audaciously visible year for you. We don't know yet what's in store, but we'll celebrate that at the end of the year.
Wow. I'm looking forward to clipping this video, putting it against whatever's happened, and just seeing, because we kind of set it up for that now, I fear.
I dare say we should do that again, just in the spirit of playfulness. Why not?
Yeah.
Just replay and just have a look, and the before and after, for sure. And Angelina was saying, got a great conversation. Thank you. I'm actually, now you really fired me up. I'd love to do it again. Let's do it. Even if it's the end of the year or beginning of the next year, and just see what happened to the big commitments that we made, to the big intentions. And you reminded me, actually, because I know we're at time, but if anybody, I am also doing a free, it's a 20 minutes, because it's called 20 Seconds of Courage, this Wednesday on Zoom. And at 12:30. It's called 20 Seconds of Courage, which is, again, playing with the audience. I think we've got about 40, 50 people already signed up, but I actually don't know how to do it here. I will do it afterwards in the little notes on LinkedIn. If anybody watches it and they watch it before Wednesday and they're interested, I think on my social media last week, there were a couple of days when we did put it out there. Because again, I'm not an expert on this. It just will be my social media. But I just thought, in the spirit of playfulness, why not? Let's do that. Christian, anything else, I suppose, as a word of closure before you and I, well, let's commit to either December or January.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the one. And I think the power of having conversations like this, the high regard I hold you in is such that it will encourage me to actually make sure there is something I can talk to you about when we meet in December or January. So it's a deal. You've got a deal.
It's a deal. We've got a deal. It's a sort of accountability to self as well as, and for me, it's in the spirit of playfulness. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm actually really looking forward to the next one in 12 months' time.
As did I. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much for being with us. And thank you, everybody who's actually, Valentina has been here as well. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us at the beginning of the year. This is the first. You've set the bar high, Christian. Hey ho.
Thank you.
Thank you.